Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Houston Open Data Dive Show. We have a lot to get into. We're going to dig into the prior leaderboards and all of the historical data that we can for Memorial Park to get us ready for this year's Texas Children's Houston Open. Got a fun show for you all, so let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler, much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You won't regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I did end up posting a little bit of research earlier today around the prior three winners of the Houston Open since Memorial Park has hosted this tournament. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do this week and every week for the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest that I play. That comes out every Wednesday evening after Calls and the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and he continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of course history, recent form, all of that. So go show him some support. Subscribe to that article. It is free to subscribe to, by the way, and follow him over on social media. And then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. Have you made any wagers for the Houston Open? I fired off a couple of names at numbers that I liked this early this afternoon. So if you made any wagers, who is the favorite in your early prep for this week? Is it Scotty Scheffler? Perhaps is it somebody else? Who do you like? Who are you pivoting away from as you've been researching? But we are here to answer all of your questions and dig into the data for the Houston Open. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2024 Texas Children's Houston Open. And we start, as we always do, on a Monday evening with the extended forecast at Windfinder. Apparently they had quite a bit of wind today, maybe some rain in the Houston area. Pardon me as I center this camera. Later on in the week, though, it looks like Thursday could be pretty calm. Not much there. But Friday and Saturday looks pretty gusty at the very least. Maybe not a whole lot in the sustained winds, but pretty gusty. Gusts into the 20s, perhaps, and maybe even a little bit on Sunday as well. So that is something we'll have to keep an eye on throughout the week, especially tomorrow and into Wednesday as we finalize our lineups and get prepared for Wednesday night's DFS Tactics show to see how the forecast changes or how it solidifies throughout the week. But with that, we are going to be taking a look at a little bit of some wind performance. So you see in the last 2 years, let me check the moderate and windy conditions. In moderate and windy conditions, our top performers in the field this week: Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Sahith Theegala, Harry Hall, Will Zalatoris, Patrick Rogers, Carson Young, Andrew Novak, Mark Hubbard, and Akshay Bhatia. Before we go any further, there have been 2 field changes. Kevin Yu and Maverick McNeely have decided not to play the Texas Children's Houston Open. So Kevin Yu and Mav McNeely are out this week in Houston. One thing we did not look at last night, but we're definitely going to. This is a very long course. Very, very long course. It's a par 70 that's over 7,400 yards. Just very, very long. So in the past 2 years, on long courses, our top performers are Scotty Scheffler, Sam Stevens, Akshay Bhatia, Wyndham Clark, Kevin Chappell, Eric Barnes, Michael Kim, Tony Finau, Hayden Springer, and Will Zalatoris. A little bit of overlap, especially here at the top. Of course, Scotty Scheffler and Wyndham Clark, probably the two biggest names, or arguably the two biggest names in the field this week. Akshay Bhatia was up there in terms of wind and total performance, I believe, or wind and now long course, I believe. So do make a note of that. That those are players we could probably focus on at the beginning portion of the week in our research. I will take a look at difficult scoring relative to par, and the main reason for that, if we look at the historic conditions, most every single round has been difficult here at Memorial Park. I do think this plays a little bit easier though this year. The first 3 times we've seen Memorial Park has been in the fall, and the Bermuda is still alive and thriving. It is dormant right now at this time of year, so we are looking at Poa Trivialis, which is a surface that has been very common on the PGA Tour recently. Also, that rough is going to be very short. It's going to be very short, only 1.25 inches, whereas the past couple of years, I took a look at the previous GCSA tournament fact sheets. They had been listed at 2.5, even 3 inches of rough. So I don't think the rough is going to be nearly as difficult to play out of. So I would envision probably a more average difficulty this week. But it still could play difficult because it is still a very long par 70. But in case with that wind, it does play truly difficult. Our top performers, when rounds have been difficult relative to par in the past 2 years, Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Will Zalatoris, Jason Day, Justin Suh, Sahith Theegala, Ryan Fox, Tony Finau, Siwoo Kim, and Gary Woodland. Only because I see him at the very, very corner of my eye. One of the 2 players that has come in for Kevin Yu and Mav McNeely is Davey Vanderwalt. He was a sponsor's exemption. I believe the other one is probably Bill Hawes. I think those are the 2. No, excuse me, it was Austin Cook. Austin Cook and Davey Vanderwalt were the 2 that replaced Mav McNeely and Kevin Yu in terms of field changes. But anyway, there's a look at a few kind of overarching filters: difficult, windy, long. I'm sure I'm going to have some combination of all 3 factored into the mixed condition model, or at least long course and difficult would be my guess. Even though I do think it does play to average, it'll definitely be on the more difficult end of average. Not sure I'm going to do anything with wind. It might be one of those situations like last week where we just kind of take a look at wind performance, negate or just not even consider players who aren't good in the wind. And of course, as the forecast kind of solidifies and gets closer, we'll figure out if there's a wave advantage that we want to take a look at. But this far out, I'm not going to be doing anything to that effect. So let's go ahead and jump straight into, in fact, let me bring in all records here. We're going to jump into these prior leaderboards, just clearing out the filters and looking at 2024 seasons from when we come here. Looking at this, you'll see this says 2023 Cadence Bank. This was played in 2020, the fall of 2022. So be aware of this, that the course has not been seen for about 1.5 years now. But Tony Finau is technically your defending champion. We look at just the top 15 here due to ties. Only 1 player negative and off the tee, but a lot of these numbers aren't necessarily too large. I imagine Tony Finau was pretty close to the lead there at 4.2, second behind Wyndham Clark. Now, you do have your cut making. No doubt about that. You do have a miscut from Lee Hodges fairly low down here, but you got your cut making. Your winner was second, absolutely. Not a whole lot of elite correlation, though. You have a couple of players negative in approach, a couple of players negative in around the green, not a whole lot, or I mean, excuse me, a few more players negative in putting, which is a little surprising considering what we saw in the course breakdown. Strokes gained, especially for our winners, it was a lot about the putting. So as we move down this leaderboard, it's interesting to note that the around the green actually stays fairly solid here in the, around the top 20 to top 25 range. Again, we sorted on the off the tee. I am interested to see this around the green. You see 8.1, 6.1. A little bit more correlation, although our winner wasn't as high up here. A little bit more correlation at the very top of the around the green. Irons, always going to be important. Do have a couple of pretty high miscuts, but our winner was fairly high up here at a 5.3. Top 10, a top 5. Our runner-up, a top 10, a top 10, a top 10. So iron play, not to be ignored. Putting, whole lots of correlation here. Our winner was second in that as well. One very high miscut from Tyler Duncan, who putt very, very well, but did not hit his irons well at all. But winner, top 5, a couple more top 10s. Short game, I think, is going to be a pretty decent factor. You see Mackenzie Hughes was not ball striking it all that well, but still top 20 due to his putting prowess, and he's always really good around the green, or generally really good around the green. Stefan Jaeger did much the same with that as well. Whereas if we look at players that weren't very good with their short game, you come down here to somebody like Siwoo Kim. His irons were immaculate in 2022, but not very good with the short game. He was more of a middling finish. Whereas you have a couple of examples here where, like Aaron Rai, his short game was fantastic, top 10. Stefan Jaeger was negative in both aspects of ball striking, but his short game was fantastic that week, top 10. Mackenzie Hughes, top 20. Scott Piercy, not much in the driving, but decent with the irons, but his short game was strong, top 20. So I'm thinking it's going to be, we're looking at more so a short game. We don't want to ignore the irons, obviously, but I'm thinking it's more so around the green and the putting that we want to look at. If we look at the 2021 fall, when Jason Kokrak won, take a look at strokes gained. Now, he was not much into the around the green at all. This is probably what's dropping the graph here for our winners in terms of around the green. It's probably from Jason Kokrak. But otherwise, we have a pretty decent amount of correlation here. Again, the top 14 or so. Other than Kokrak, the two players that were negative and around the green were pretty close to field average. You have 4 players negative off the tee, 4 players negative in approach, one player negative in putting. To be expected, it was Luke List, not the best, or not known for his putting. So if we sort again on these various strokes gained, again, decent amount of cut making, decent amount of correlation. McCumber pretty high in terms of a miscut and off the tee. Our winner a little bit lower here in off the tee than Tony Finau was, but certainly nothing to ignore. A couple of seconds, a top 15, a top 20. It's okay. It's okay. When you look at the around the green, a whole lot of correlation other than maybe Matthew Neesmith, which is a middling finish. Our winner wasn't necessarily as high up here. Of course, he was very bad around the green, actually. One of the lowest in around the green. But he was amazing with the flat stick, amazing with the irons. I still think around the green is something that we're going to want to focus on this week. And, of course, the putting. A top 30 from Kelly Craft, and then second, first, fifth, top 15, top 5, top 15 a little bit lower, top 15, top 10, yeah. So a lot of putting, a little bit in the irons. We'll take a look at off the tee and around the green. I'm more focused on the around the green, I think, this week. Although I can be persuaded or I would enjoy the discussion around the off the tee as well, if you think it is important. So as we look at the strokes gained, I know I set this for 2024, but I'm actually going to bring in the last 2 years because I want to look at off the tee on long courses when driver is kind of forced into these players' hands. We're not necessarily looking at driving distance, although that could be a small factor of it. When driver is in these players' hands, who is the best off the tee? When on long courses, our top off the tee players have been Scotty Scheffler. Oh, I'm sorry, that's strokes gained total. Our top off the tee players on long courses the past 2 years: Scotty Scheffler, Will Zalatoris, Cam Champ, Luke List, Keith Mitchell, Gary Woodland, Johnny Vegas, Tony Finau, Taylor Moore, and Kevin Doherty are our top 10 in terms of off the tee on long courses the past couple of years. I will bring this in to just the 2024 season for the next two. Our top iron players in the field this week: Tom Hoagie, Scotty Scheffler, Tony Finau, Wyndham Clark, Will Zalatoris, Doug Ghim, Jake Knapp, Grayson Sigg, Carson Young, and Andrew Novak. Those have been the top iron players in the field this week in the 2024 season. Around the green, of course, the number one player has decided not to play. So S.H. Kim, Mackenzie Hughes, Scotty Scheffler, Wilson Furr, Jorge Campillo, Andrew Novak, J-Day, Martin Laird, Aaron Baddeley, and C.T. Pan are our top 10 in around the green. And I do think it's going to carry a decent amount of weight. And then lastly, I am going to have to bring in all of the Poa Trivialis overseeded courses. So bear with me as I do that. That's Harbor Town, Innisbrook. We have Quail Hollow, Stadium Course, the Amex Stadium Course, TPC San Antonio, Sawgrass, and Scottsdale. These are all the courses that are consistent on the PGA Tour that have Poa Trivialis overseed. So on those courses, in the past 2 years, our top putters have been Taylor Montgomery, Sam Ryder, Justin Suh, Aaron Baddeley, Thomas Dietrich, Ben Griffin, Chad Ramey, Billy Horschel, Andrew Novak, and Sahith Theegala. Those are our top 10 putters on Poa Trivialis the past 2 years. All right, let's clear all of those. We're going to get prepped for fairways and greens, and I will probably do this on long courses. We can also look at difficult, so I'm going to go ahead and get that prepped for long courses. All right, let's take a look at some driving and some greens from Memorial Park. Driving, or distance, a little bit, but you see there's quite a few players that were negative. Slightly negative, but still negative in terms of distance. I am thinking it's more about either the good drives gained or the greens this week. You see both players that were negative in those two statistics are the same. Aaron Wright, negative in good drives and greens. Stefan Jaeger, negative in good drives and greens. Otherwise, every one of these top 15 were positive in that. Fairways, I don't think is going to be too much of an issue, although Tony Finau did lead in that category, which is always important to note. And you see, you had a pretty high miscut, some middling finishes around in here. I don't think it's going to be a huge factor this week in terms of what we want to look at around Memorial Park, considering that rough is indeed only 1 1/4 or 1.5 inches long. It's not going to be detrimental to these players. If we look at distance, a decent amount of cut making, although our winner isn't up here as high. A decent amount of correlation. Got some cut making, top 30s, and then surrounded by some elite finishes. So what I'm seeing or what I said from last night is kind of holding true. I could see maybe 5% on this. I just don't want to go too overboard with it because it's not a direct correlation. Our winner didn't necessarily have a lot of distance. If we look at good drives, yep, our winner led in that. Our winner probably led in greens. Yep. And you see right below him, top 10, a middling from Siwoo last year, runner-up, third, top 10. So greens was a big factor. Good drives gained was a pretty big factor, although we do have some miscuts a little bit higher up here. If we look at 2022, or the 2021 fall, fairways and greens, again, when Jason Kokrak won, this is the top 14. Good amount of players that were negative in distance. I just don't see it being a tremendous factor. 2 players negative in good drives, 2 players negative in greens. Fairways, decent. Our winner didn't lead in the category this time. Good drives, our winner was pretty high up here. Top 5, top 30, a couple of top 20s. A miscut doesn't help, but you still got a lot of pretty big numbers in here. And then greens. Our winner had moved all the way up to third in greens. So I'm liking looking at greens maybe when it's difficult, but I really do kind of like looking at long courses, especially since this is probably one of the longest par 70s that PGA Tour professionals will see. So I'll just get this set for the scoring. But on long courses, defined as over 7,400 yards, our top, we'll just go straight to greens. Our top greens in regulation gained players on long courses: Scotty Scheffler, Joseph Bramlett, Henrik Norlander, Ben Silverman, Tony Finau, Gary Woodland, Alex Smalley, Johnny Vegas, Wyndham Clark, and J.J. Spawn are our top 10 at greens gained on long courses. If you wanted to look at good drives, a lot of same overlap here. Bramlett, Silverman, Woodland, Spawn, Neesmith, and Buckley really rise as they are much more in the fairways portion as opposed to the greens. Then you have Scheffler, Carson Young, Aaron Rai, and Tony Finau. Those are your top 10 good drives gained players on long courses. If we look at difficult, which I'm not 100% sure that's what we're going to do this week, but it would make some sense to look at our top greens in regulation gained players when rounds are difficult. In the past 2 years, Scotty Scheffler, Alex Smalley, Tony Finau, Wyndham Clark, Gary Woodland, Will Zalatoris, Tom Hoagie, Doug Ghim, Luke List, and Johnny Vegas. A little bit of the same overlap here for good drives gained. Scheffler would be in there, Smalley, Finau, Woodland, Ghim. Hoagie would be in honorable mention, being 13th. Lashley's up there. Hickok's up there. So I'm leaning more so in the greens, especially on long courses. Seems to be where I'm going, and a lot of this would also cover the long iron proximities, I think. Just kind of conceptually thinking through the various filters and metrics here at Fantasy National. Looking at greens gained on long courses would kind of encapsulate some performance with long irons as well. But before we go to that, we're going to look at scoring. So birdies and bogeys. Now last year, Tony Finau was much more in the birdies gained, and he ran away kind of from the field. I mean, Alex Noren was fairly close to him as well, but 10.2, and then you very quickly get into the fives. A lot of elite correlation, as you would expect. If you're making lots of birdies, you're going to be rising on the leaderboard. Absolutely no eagles, really. Those are all of the players right there that were positive in eagles gain. It's just not something here. Whereas if we look at the bogey avoidance, 3rd, 2nd, 4th, 35th, 4th, 1st, it's strong. I think the more consistent metric is the bogey avoidance. Yeah, this explains it quite well, actually. In the top 15, there was only one player negative in birdies gained, but not a single player negative in bogey avoidance. If we continue on down, another player negative in birdies gained before you reach a negative in bogey avoidance. So still kind of looking at the bogey avoidance as what we're wanting to look at in terms of scoring. And in 2022, birdies and bogeys, again, Kokrak running away from people other than maybe Scotty in the birdies gained. But a lot of correlation, or a lot of consistency, I should say, in the bogey avoidance. So 1st, 2nd, 5th, 15th, 4th, 7th, very, very strong. No doubt about it. Bogey avoidance, other than Shane Lowry, also very strong. Again, I'm leaning towards the bogey avoidance, and we'll back that up in Microsoft Excel, as we'll see. 2 different ways we're going to look at this. On long courses, your top bogey avoiders: Scotty Scheffler, Dylan Wu, Aaron Baddeley, Sam Stevens, Jimmy Walker, Gary Woodland, Jason Day, Henrik Norlander, Peter Malnati, Akshay Bhatia, and Saying You'll Know. But my preference, as always, is if I'm looking at a scoring metric like birdies gained, bogey avoidance, I'm going to try to match it up, if it makes sense, with a scoring filter, either easy or difficult relative to par. So, your top bogey avoiders when rounds have been difficult the past 2 years: Scotty, Wyndham Clark, J-Day, Will Zalatoris, Alex Smalley, Tom Hoagie, Cam Davis, Tony Finau, Doug Gim, and Chris Goddard. This is where I'm probably going to go in the mixed condition model to look at bogey avoidance when it's difficult. Having said that, something else that I do want to look at that I forgot to when we were on the long courses, let's take a look at opportunities gained. Your top opportunities gained players on long courses the past couple of years: Tom Hoagie, Ryan Palmer, Trace Crow, Michael Kim, Wyndham Clark, Eric Barnes, Tony Finau, Kramer Hickok, Parker Cootie, and Hayden Buckley are your top 10 in opportunities gained. I would not be surprised to see myself put in some opportunities gained in the mixed condition model. It would only be 5%, but I do like that idea on a Monday evening, knowing that I have all of tomorrow and most of Wednesday to work on this. All right, getting this set for the proximities and the par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Let's look at proximities, and we know from the course breakdown last night that the majority of approach shots here at Memorial Park come over 200 plus. Over a quarter of the approach shots are from 200 plus, which makes a lot of sense. The par 5s, 2 of the 3 are under 600 yards, so they are gettable for the long hitters. But you have 3 par 4s over 500 yards. You have 2 more par 4s that are over 490. So long par 4s here, which lend themselves to very, very long approach shots. So if we look at the top 15 from last year, yeah, you've got several players here that were pretty solid in terms of 200 plus proximity. In fact, only 2 players really negative in total procs. So I'm thinking total procs might be something as well. If we sort, oh my gosh, yeah. 4 straight top 10s up here, a couple of top 30s, second, top 20. Your winner was pretty high up here. Like total procs looks like it was very, very strong in terms of correlation in technically last year's or 2022 Fall's Houston Open. And 200 plus, not necessarily as correlating, which is to be expected. You know, pretty high miscut from Matt Wallace. Woodland top 10. Not a whole lot here. Again, it kind of looks more like in the total procs. I kind of casually mentioned last night that the 150 to 175, or at least the players who have played the Memorial Park the best in its 3 years, have kind of seen a lot of success from 150 to 175. You kind of see that here. Top 5, some more top 10s, runner up. So maybe 150 to 175 might be a slight hedge or angle that we can take this week. If we look at Kokrak's win 2 falls ago, top 14. Now the 200 plus was much less correlating. You see quite a few players negative there. A couple players negative in terms of total procs as well, including Kevin Tway, who was just really bad in terms of total procs. If we sort, still fairly solid up here. Our winner's not as high, but really only a couple of high missed cuts from Knox and Lahiri. But a decent amount of correlation, I suppose. 200 plus. Decent bit of cut making, and really falls off after that. I don't know. 150 to 175. Maybe a little bit less. So I'm actually leaning towards total procs right now. Would be interested to hear the community's thoughts, so put it in chat or in the comments. But I'm kind of leaning towards total procs at the moment. So in the 2024 season, your top total procs players in the field this week: Joel Damon, who has been very, very good here in his 2 attempts at Memorial Park, a T5 and a T9. Tony Finau, your defending champion. Tom Hoagie, Kurt Kitayama, Scotty Scheffler, Keith Mitchell, Justin Lauer, Will Zalatoris, Andrew Novak, and Aaron Rai are your top total procs players in the field this week. If you wanted to look at the 200 plus, which makes sense too, although I didn't see a tremendous amount of correlation from the 200 plus, but your top 200 plus proximity players in the field this week: Keith Mitchell, Olesen, Thorbjorn Olesen, Tom Hoagie, McIntyre, Bobby Mack, Tony Finau, Novak, Ches Reavie, Luke List, Kevin Doherty, Kurt Kitayama, and Carson Young. So probably want to put a star next to Keith Mitchell, Tom Hoagie, Tony Finau, Andrew Novak, Kurt Kitayama. Those 5 or 6 are top 10 in both total procs and 200 plus procs. If you're going to put a decent amount of emphasis on proximity, those players you would want to star. Carson Young would get an honorable mention. Thorbjorn Olesen would get an honorable mention. Probably Ches Reavie, to be fair, would be an honorable mention as well. Austin Smotherman as well, 16th and 12th. Aaron Rai, 10th and 17th. So some notable players there. If you are going to put a lot of emphasis in proximity, I'm thinking about total procs based on what we just saw, but I don't know. Let's look at par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Par 3s, Tony Finau played them exceptionally well. Surprisingly, it looks like the 150 to 175 is where he made or did his damage, and there's no. Actually, no, I lied. There are a couple from that range. Just to get a quick reminder, so 2 and then 1 each across. Okay, so 2, 1, 1, 1. So he did all of his damage on the very short par 3s. He led in par 3s. You see the extreme amount of correlation, other than maybe Sebastian Munoz, who played the par 3s well. You got a couple of middling to clunker finishes, but lots of solid performances around them in terms of the par 3s. If we sort, decent there, I suppose. Got a fair amount there, I suppose. Not a whole lot here with a miscut leading. I don't know. I don't see a whole lot in a specific range. If we look at 2022, par 3s, Kokrak, 7.1, led in it. Look at the extreme amount of correlation around them, other than, you know, a clunker from Taylor Gooch. But lots of solid performances in the par threes. Again, it kind of looks like it'll be 150 to 175. I don't know if I want to put a whole lot of emphasis in one specific range, considering they're pretty well balanced here around Memorial Park. So, our top par 3 performers in 2024 in the field this week: Will Zalatoris, Grayson Sigg, Tom Hoagie, Billy Horschel, David Skins, Chan Kim, Kurt Kitayama, Jorge Campillo, Nate Lashley, and Michael Kim. So do not be surprised if these players rise considerably come Wednesday night, because the par 3s are going to carry pretty good amount of weight. Remember, there are 5 par 3s here at Memorial Park. I get this set for the par 4s. And last night it appeared, when we looked in Excel, that the 450 to 5s was the most important for the players who have had continuous success at, at Memorial Park. 350 to 4, but there's only one that falls to this range on the scorecard. If we sort, a whole lot of correlation up here. You still have to play the par 4 as well. That's pretty strong up here for the 350 to 4 all again, but there's only one on the scorecard. So it goes 1, 3, 3, and 3. You would think that the 500 plus would have something, but not a whole lot here. Not a whole lot there. 450 to 5, 7, 5, 5. Look at that correlation there. So that's starting to play out, that we saw, like what we saw in Microsoft Excel last night. Yeah, pretty solid there. At least in last year's, or 2022's falls, looks like all of the par 4s were pretty darn important. Now, Kokrak was not good at them, per se. Just field average. Everybody else around him, though, was really darn solid. He just took advantage of the par 3s and the par 5s. If there was a range, maybe the 450 to 5s, I guess. 4.6 is not as necessarily as high. Yeah, you got a lot of miscuts pretty high up here. Yeah, I don't know. I still think it's the 450 to 5, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Get this set for the par 5s. Our top par 4 performers in the field this week: Scotty, Peter Malnati, Wyndham Clark, Sahith Theegala, Taylor Montgomery, Siwoo Kim, Sam Ryder, Ben Silverman, Jay Day, and Joseph Bramlett. Again, I'm thinking it'd be the 450 to 5, and we'll confirm this over in Microsoft Excel, but I do think it's the 450 to 5 if there was a specific range. So Scotty, Carl Yuan, Alex Noren, who was top 5 last year, Wyndham Clark, Eric Barnes, Siwoo Kim, Tony Finau, Hayden Springer, Garrick Higo, and Rafael Campos are your top par 4 performers from 450 to 5. And then let's get set for the par 5s. Finau was pretty solid at them. And you see the range. Interesting to note that the scorecard has 2 listed here and 1 listed here in terms of length. But yet, the last time we saw Memorial Park, they did not play any par 5s over 600 yards. So it's important to note that. Most of your strokes gained here are in the 550 to 6. I imagine it's going to be a pretty similar ordering in terms of correlation. Yeah, in fact, that miscut kind of falls a little bit. So, looking like the 550 to 6, at least the last time we saw Memorial Park. And in Kokrak's win, yeah, again, not a single par 5 was played over 600 yards. Now, that might change this year because of the change in schedule. It's you've got the rough isn't as long, but just going by what they've done the past 2 years or the past 2 times we've seen Memorial Park, nothing's played over 600 yards. So our top par 5 performers from 550 to 600 yards in 2024: Mark Hubbard, Tyler Duncan, J-Day, Sahith Theegala, Ryan Fox, Nick Dunlap, Andrew Novak, Scotty Scheffler, Alex Noren, and Wyndham Clark. All right. With that, in case we want to look at anything else, I'll bring us back to the strokes gained. Let's go to Microsoft Excel, and we keep talking about looking at some specifics around Memorial Park. Well, let's look at the raw numbers in the 3 years that Memorial Park has been seen. So we see off the tee, pretty consistent, although it's lost in importance each year. It's slowly been declining. The approach has been very consistent. Nothing in between a 2.6 and a 2.48, basically. So very, very consistent. You like that. 2 of the 3 years, the around the green was of extreme importance, and 1 year it was not. So I'm inclined to believe the 2 of the 3 years, but it's also very, a very small sample size compared to some of these other courses that we've seen that are consistent on the PGA Tour. We haven't seen Memorial Park much, so I'm inclined to believe that the around the green is going to matter with 2 of the 3 years showing as such. Putting, much the same. 2 of the 3 years have held some pretty significant importance, and it's not like this one was awfully low. It was just lower than the other 2. Distance, not really all that high. Not really all that high. I mean, you look at the American Express, it's held, gosh dang it, it's held a little bit more. The Farmers is more important on distance. Even Phoenix has or is close to Memorial Park. So that's why I just don't think distance is going to carry a huge amount here. Instead, this good drives gain number is pretty large, and this greens number is really large, although it has declined just like the off the tee has declined each year. So one of these 2, maybe a little bit of both, is what we're focused on for Memorial Park. We look at scoring. As I mentioned for the Valspar last week, it's very, very rare that you see bogey avoidance have a higher raw number than the birdies gained. So we're looking at bogey avoidance this week. Clearly, that's a very, very high raw number in terms of bogey avoidance. It might be one of the highest. I'd have to cheat here. Give me a second. 3.23. That does look. So we have Wells Fargo is later in the summer is a 3.6. So Memorial Park in its 3 years that it's been seen is the second highest in terms of bogey avoidance. So definitely something we're going to be focused on this week. All right, par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Let's see if there's a specific range that matters the most in its 3 years. You look at par 3s. There are no par 3s that fall to this range on the scorecard, and the ranges that do are pretty darn even. So again, I'm just kind of looking at par 3s in general, just par 3s in total. Now 2020 was a slight high outlier, been pretty consistent the other 2, but I don't see anything that would signify needing to separate out a specific range in terms of par 3s. We look at par 4s. Again, this is why I thought the 450 to 5s were the most important, because it's pretty clearly the highest among the ranges. But even so, it's not even making up 50% of the total in par 4s. So if we were to separate out a range, it would be this one and at 5%. But I'm kind of thinking just total par 4s. And then par fives, the other end of the spectrum, almost all of the strokes gained total is in the 550 to 600. So pretty clearly we're only going to be looking at this range of par fives, even though on the scorecard they do have one that measures to here. They haven't played it to that length the last two editions at Memorial Park. So we're looking at 550 to 600. That's about it. That's about it. And his total procs number, just off, just to the right of your screen, that's a pretty big number there. That gives me a lot more confidence in thinking about total procs. That's a very, very large number for total procs. It might be one of the largest. I'd have to go over and see. So we have a 135, 129 at the Byron Nelson. So yeah. Oh, sorry, Wyndham at 138. So another situation where Houston and Memorial Park is the second highest number in a metric, procs total and bogey avoidance. So that gives me more confidence to use procs total this week. There's a look at Memorial Park and its raw data and the raw numbers behind it. Let's save that. Excel's moving slow. The next thing I want to look at, let's take a look at my mixed condition model from the fall, a year and a half ago. See what I looked at, how good it was in terms of predictability and results, and see what we're going to be perhaps changing. So Aaron Wise, with a little bit of a caveat here, he was actually second in my ranking. Sam Burns withdrew, and whenever you have a withdrawal in Fantasy National, it kind of throws some of the metrics off. So of the non-withdrawals, Aaron Wise was the number one player. I did have the winner second. It's not, that wasn't a huge shock, as he was about 18% owned, 10,500. So, he was one of the tournament favorites, but I did have him up here. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 missed cuts in my top 20. Okay, it's not great, but it's not the worst. We've had some where we've had as many as 8 to 10, so a little bit on the high side, but not terrible. Jaeger at a sub 10% with a top 10 was pretty solid. Of course, Scotty was always going to be up there. Wyndham Clark top 20 at 7%, pretty solid. Joel Damon top 10 at less than 10%, solid. Hadwin. So this was okay. This was pretty good. Again, my winner was up here. A few too many miscuts, but acceptable. I would accept this again as a result of this year's Houston. So what did we look at? 15% in par threes. Makes a lot of sense considering there are 5 of them here. You see I did separate out just that length of par 5. 10% around the green. Makes a lot of sense. 10% bogey avoidance, and I used the difficult to par filter. Probably exactly the way I'm going to use it again this year, matching the scoring metric with the scoring filter. I did look at greens when it's difficult. You could argue to look at greens on long courses. So something to think about in that regard. I only had 5% in putting. That's clearly a mistake. This number and percentage is going to rise, and we're going to be able to narrow in on the specific courses that have Poa Trivialis. So if this one doesn't end up being predictable or predictive, we can kind of understand why, but I think this is way too low. I think we need to increase the amount of putting that we look at in this year's mixed condition model. Hey, good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Hope you are getting ready for the Houston. You have an idea on how you want to attack opening day for baseball on Thursday and all of that. Thanks again. Good to see you this evening. Oh, yeah. I've been a Duke fan all of my life, much to the chagrin of many around me. But that is where the fandom lies, and since they made it out of the first weekend, you got to suffer through a little bit of superstition on wearing the same outfits throughout the week for this week for the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. This I think this was a Mike Dunleavy jersey, I believe, way back in the day in the early to mid 90s. Hey, good evening, Tony. Thanks for jumping in chat. Appreciate it. They've looked good. They looked really good. I think James Madison was a little bit overmatched. I didn't see much of the Vermont game. I was actually out with friends, just hanging out. But at least by the score, they looked like they played well. So Houston's going to be an issue. Houston's pretty good. So I don't expect them to advance much further. But good to see you this week, or in chat tonight, Tony. Hopefully you're ready for the Houston as well. Hopefully your Valspar went much better than mine. Continue on from last year's or 2022 fall Memorial Park mixed condition. This is a mistake. This needs to rise a little bit. We don't want to ignore the approach. I did look at 5% driving distance when it's difficult. If anything, I'm going to change this to 5% on long courses, considering driver is going to be in these players' hands. If everyone's hitting driver, I do want to see driving distance or maybe just off the tee. So I'm not convinced yet that I'm going to use driving distance, but I will have some amount of driving capability, whether that's off the tee or driving distance. But kind of thinking through that one a little bit. I have 5% in procs, total procs, and after seeing how through Microsoft Excel and the prior leaderboards, how much that really played effect, I kind of like the idea of using total procs again. You notice I had 5% in par 4s, and then I did separate out the 450 to 500. Okay. If anything, this probably needs to rise a little bit, go to 10%, and then maybe 5% this, but and then apparently I was just trying to solve the matrix, looking at 10 to 20 feet on putting. Don't think that's anything we're going to do this year, so that's 10% we're going to get back. So how predictive were these? Where you can see the par 3s weren't very predictive for the players that finished, I think, in about the top 26 or 27. Not very predictive on the par 3s. That still does not deter me from thinking about 15% here, because there are 5 par 3s. So the par 3s are going to carry some significant weight. The par 5s, fairly solid. Around the green was pretty mediocre to bad. Now the bogey avoidance, look at that, 45. That's solid in terms of correlation. That is solid. A 45. Green's even better at a 43. Very predictive. Putting, not so much, but again, we can attribute that to not looking at the correct filter. Now that we can narrow down our search to the specific courses that have Poa Trivialis, not just looking at Bermuda, I think that putting is going to be a little bit better. Irons weren't actually very predictive either at a 57. Distance is solid. Proximity was not. And then the rest of the par 4s and the par 4s 450 to 500 were okay. They were okay. I'll be there on Thursday. Got to check my boy Scotty and Wyndham out. Wow. Well, that sounds awesome. Is that an area of the country that you're from? Because if so, you've got a lot of good golf down there. But hopefully you enjoy it. We'll have some fun. Get a good up close personal look at a few of these players before the Masters. So definitely some areas we can improve on, some things that we're going to change for this year's mixed condition model. Again, the putting, we're definitely going to increase and shore up that filter. Distance having been one of the more predictive from last year's. Interesting to note. But yeah, so we got some room for improvement, but it was an okay mixed condition model from last year, I would think. And then I'll save that. the last thing we're going to look at, the early look file, and a little bit of the research that I put out on social media. Now that we have seen the metrics that matter most, or what we think are going to matter the most around Memorial Park, let's see who has played or who has done the best at those metrics in the 3 times that we've seen Memorial Park. Finau rank 1. I mean, he's going to rise pretty high just because he's the defending champion here. He's been okay, but he's in really bad form. He's not terrible. He's not a terrible golfer. He's just in bad form right now. He's not played well. So I understand. I'm in Houston, first golf event. Awesome. Well, that's sweet. So hope you enjoy it. You'll have to give the community the scouting report on a lot of the players, but have fun. Hopefully the weather is good and you don't have to battle any of that. So that's a few people now that in the community that are able to make their way to some golf tournaments. I know Darnell is able to catch the Travelers whenever the PGA Tour goes up to there. P has seemingly been to a lot of different tournaments. So pretty neat stuff. I really like Tagala this week. I do. I wanted to put in a win ticket on Tagala this week, but I did not like his number. Apparently the books and a lot of others in the golf industry really like Tagala this week. I do like Tagala. I think this course suits him pretty well, especially since the rough isn't difficult to play out of. But to wrap the show up, the players who have hit their irons the best around Memorial Park, of course, Tyson Alexander, his runner-up finish last year. Hammer was okay. Joel Damon has been great around Memorial Park. If Scott Piercy gets into the field, his irons have been very good here. That's why he's highlighted in orange. He's an alternate at the moment. There's Sahith Theegala. He's 2 for 2 here. Nothing great in terms of an average finish, but I mean 2 for 2. And do note that every time he has seen Memorial Park, it's been when the Bermuda is live. Now that it's dormant with Poa Trivialis, he's one of the better putters on Poa Trivialis. I think you can double check that from earlier in the show when we look at the top 10 on Poa Trivialis, but I think he's much better on Poa Trivialis, so another reason why to like Sahith Theegala. Other iron players that have been good here, if Russell Knox gets into the field, he's been good with his irons. Of course, Tony Finau, been very good with his irons here. He's just been very good here in general. Patrick Rogers, a little bit less in terms of the success, but he's been good with the irons. Of course, Luke List, ball striker, no surprise there. Neesmith, Riley, Eric Barnes, rolling with Heavy Hughes and DFS. Yeah, I do like Mackenzie Hughes, but it'll all be contingent on projected ownerships. If he's something like 20% owned, I can't recommend it. But Mackenzie Hughes is somebody that I was targeting DFS wise early on this week. Our top putters at Memorial Park in its 3 years it's been seen: Austin Cook, who just got into the field today. So keep him in mind. You see, he's in 2 tournaments. He's averaged 6.5 on these greens. Somebody to think about, perhaps as a cheap option. As we were talking about, there's Mackenzie Hughes. He hasn't even been all that bad with the ball striking here. He's just been excellent with his short game. Alex Smalley, not a very good putter, and he's putt well here, so absolutely somebody to think about this week. There's Alexander again. Stefan Jaeger, much like Mackenzie Hughes, been doing it in the short game. Adam Long, Tony Finau. There's J-Day, 3 for 3, average finish at 20, in a top 25. I think I might have overlooked your Andrew Novak thing. I don't hate it. I did play Andrew Novak once or twice at the Valspar, and he was pretty good, so he's in good form. I don't hate it, Darnell. I'll put it that way. I mean, without having made my mixed condition model, it's hard to say, 1,000% I'm in or out on a guy, but I don't hate it off the top of my head. Probably like others a little bit more, but yeah. Aaron Rai been good with the short game here, and he's not really known for short game, so take a note of that. Wyndham Clark's been pretty good here, especially with the putter. So there's a look at your top putters at Memorial Park. Let's look at greens. This is something that I'll definitely be looking at in the mixed condition model. Your top greens in regulation gained players. Again, Alexander one time, Vincent Whaley, Johnny Vegas, 2 for 2. There's Alex Smalley, Joel Damon, Davis Riley. Siwoo a little bit less in terms of success, but he's gained a lot of greens. Michael Kim, much less in success, but gained a lot of greens. There's J-Day, Tony Finau, Lonto Griffin, Patrick Rogers. There's Sahith Theegala lurking a little bit lower, just at the bottom of your screen if we went to the top. So, okay. Keith Mitchell, 2 for 3. Luke List, 2 for 3 here. Adam Long, 2 for 3. A few players to make note of, perhaps. Bogey avoiders. Definitely want to look at our top bogey avoiders at Memorial Park. Ben Taylor, Tyson Alexander. There's Alex Smalley again. Mac Hughes, one of the top bogey avoiders in the 3 years Memorial Park's been seen. Adam Long, Wyndham Clark, Rye, Damon, Finau, Austin Cook again, J-Day. A little bit lower here, Lashley, Riley, Sahith, Yeager. Don't want to do too many because I do want to show you a little bit of the research, but par 3s and par 5s, maybe total procs. Top par 3 performers at Memorial Park. All of these players just one time. There's Tony Finau. I mean, defending champion. He's had a lot of success at Memorial Park. Alex Smalley again. Austin Cook, Mackenzie Hughes. There's Scotty, Eric Barnes. Joseph Bramlett, a little bit less in terms of success, but very good at the par 3s. Damon's been very good at the par 3s. J-Day. Par 5s, you definitely have to score on them here at Memorial Park. Par 5s. Tyson Alexander, again, only one time. All these players just one time. There's Wyndham Clark again. Tom Hoge, a little bit less in terms of success, but he's been very good at the par 5s here. Davis Riley, Scotty, Damon, Rye, Adam Long, Finau, Ryan Palmer. That's a name we haven't said much, but he's been good at the par 5s here. Eric Barnes, Mackenzie Hughes. I will end off the stats portion with total procs because I am quite interested in seeing this. So your top total procs players in the 3 years the Memorial's been seen: Joel Damon, Davis Riley, Alex Smalley, Russell Knox if he gets into the field. Woodland a little bit less in terms of success, but he's been very good total procs. Eric Barnes, 2 for 2. Hoagie, much less in terms of success. There's the Heath again towards the bottom of your screen. Tony Finau at the bottom of your screen. Siwoo Kim. Rogers. Matthias Schwab. So there's a look at the players who have been the best at the various metrics that we think are going to play the most important at Memorial Park. I will bring this back to the best average finish. Last thing I'm going to show you, let's take a look at a little bit of the research, and I'm going to put a pretty big asterisk on this reminder that Memorial Park has only been seen in the fall. The Bermuda is alive. It's thriving at that time. Different weather. So this is the first time we'll have seen Memorial Park in the spring. So I just want to put that out there that I'm not putting all my eggs into this basket. with that said, there are a couple of things that these winners share in common. I want you to notice that the par threes. Sorry, let me freeze these panes for you. View, freeze panes. So look at Finau. He missed the cut at the Worldwide Technology, but he gained on the par threes and then comes to Houston and just demolishes them. Jason Kokrak at the CJ Cup, gained in the par threes, then comes and demolishes them. Carlos Ortiz gained in the par threes. So this is another reason why I really truly think that par 3 performance is going to be very important, or at least recent par 3 form and par 5 form. Almost all of these players have been very good at the par 5s, or were very good at the par 5s leading into their win at the Houston Open. So recent par 5 performance, recent par 3 performance, not a whole lot here in terms of like actual recent form. Like Tony Finau only played once in that fall portion of the schedule, missed the cut, and then he wins at Houston. Jason Kokrak at a no-cut event finished 54th, missed the cut, but then wins Houston. So I'm not necessarily looking at recent form as much as just specific things. Again, par 3s, par 5s, and then not anything to do with like the matrix, the prior performance at Memorial Park. You see Tony Finau did top 25 the first time, then missed the cut, and then wins. Jason Kokrak didn't play it the first time it was played, and then wins it. And of course, Carlos Ortiz won the first one, so it hadn't been seen. So not a whole lot to do with course history either. So I'm just kind of looking at the metrics that I think are going to play the most important this week at Memorial Park. And I'm quite interested and quite intrigued to see how it plays, considering we have not seen it in the spring, only in the fall. But that's going to be it for the show this evening. Thanks to Darnell and Tony for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully I will see you Wednesday night, Tony, for the DFS Tactics show. But if not, enjoy watching Houston Open there on the grounds. It sounds like a lot of fun. But you do have a little bit of homework for the community to bring back the scouting reports, if you will. But that sounds fun. Enjoy it. Thanks to you two for jumping in chat, and thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. It helps me out a lot by you all doing that. I really appreciate the support. Love what I do, looking at taking an in-depth look at sports statistics, golf, baseball mainly, taking a look at those statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Reminder that Wednesday night we'll be here at the usual time for the DFS Tactics show, and then you can catch me in Gabe's Substack chat afterward if you are a subscriber to his article, so we continue the DFS talk over there. Thanks again for all the support, for all of the wagers you've made so far this week for the Houston Open, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Houston Open, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.